financial experts in their field. Call in and have your questions answered each week at 888-565-1470. Now, here is Steve-O and Renee with today's expert in their field.
Good afternoon and welcome to another Ask the Experts, where we bring you the top experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Our show is on every Monday and Friday from 4 to 5, and today we've gotten like 7 or 8 emails thanking us for doing this show. I don't know if that's good or bad.
I think that's good.
You think so? Hey,
well, there's a lot of people that go through divorces.
I know, but that's not the
That's
best.
not a good thing, right? It's a good thing for Tina.
Well, it's a good thing for the people that had the questions.
So let me introduce you to my great co-host, Renee.
Oh, I got a lot of greats today.
I know. And we have, and we can actually, she could say this. It's not because we have the top family law attorney, I think, in all of South
that
Florida.
specializes in family law, which is a big factor.
Let's welcome
We're
Tina.
allowed to say that.
Let's welcome Tina Lewert. Hey, how you doing?
Hi, I'm
How you
well. How are you
doing?
guys doing? Great to
Excellent.
see you.
And if you want to watch today's show, you could go to www.wwnnradio.com. On the left-hand side of the page is the TV link. Click on there, and voila, there we are.
Did you see how many views we got last month with your show?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Good.
Wow.
It's wonderful.
Wow.
Good.
And
well,
if you
hopefully
have
I'm
a
helping.
question for Tina today, you could call her live at 888-565-1470.
Wow, live calls, huh?
Yes, we'd love them.
Okay, I can handle it.
So if you have a question on family law, divorce, child support, prenups,
Alimony.
Child custody.
Yes, everything.
Did I just read that they're going to abolish, what is,
Husbands?
alimony? No,
Sorry, no, not
Alimony.
yet. Well, there's a bill, I guess, that's being drafted. This was up a couple of years ago. I don't know if you recall. It was in the news, and
They said that.
Yeah, there have been some revisions drafted just for years. Actually, they've been trying to sort of overhaul Florida alimony law, and some of the states have done this, but yeah, they're looking to possibly do away with the concept of what we call permanent alimony.
That's exactly
Yeah,
what
there
it
you
was.
go. That's yeah.
I'm
So,
so
I know. So then what would they do? Just do it for a limited amount of time? Because obviously they can't abolish all of alimony.
right, it wouldn't be, and that was actually the issue with the bill that was up 2 years ago. At the last minute, it was vetoed. The governor said no because the draft of it made it retroactive in nature, and so that would have created just craziness in the courts. Everybody would have done a mad rush to the courthouse to come back and address alimony issues from the past. Whereas the newest version and probably all future versions will only be limited to future cases.
Oh, you know what? So my alimony is 45 cents a month, and I'm trying.
That's about
good
how much
deal.
I got.
I'm thinking about hiring Tina to get it lowered. I mean, 45 cents
Well,
a
if
month.
it's
help you.
permanent, yeah.
And I always tell her, don't spend it all in one place either. Anyway, listen, Tina, tell us about your background and about your practice.
Sure. Well, I specialize, as you said, in family law. What that means is generally matters which include divorce. Within the divorce cases, we deal with issues pertaining to equitable distribution of assets and liabilities, child support, child custody, alimony, parenting issues, time sharing issues. We also do prenuptial agreements, postnuptial agreements.
Adoption?
I don't do adoption, actually,
don't?
and that's actually that's a separate specialty. They've sort of it's its own whole beast, and you should hire someone who really specializes in adoption if you're looking into that. But we do modifications of alimony and child support and child custody, enforcement, contempt, domestic violence, restraining orders, and so that's pretty much what we focus
I have
on.
to ask you something. I'm seeing signs. I'm seeing commercials everywhere. Father's rights. That's like becoming this like big area now.
There are law firms that just specialize now in
I've seen those as
father's
well.
rights.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. My personal opinion is that and what I see, I represent men and women. I represent quite a few men, and I don't know. I mean, we've gotten to the point in the law where Parents have equal rights. The custody statute that we have states that there's a presumption that both parents are entitled to, a good amount of time with the children.
Actually,
both
it's like
parents
50-50 now.
There are a lot of cases where we do 50-50. There used to be a legal presumption against 50-50.
Right.
And then, I think with that came the idea, or maybe the conception or misconception that it should always be in favor of the mother, because the mothers are the ones that tend to stay home if there is a stay-at-home parent.
But
times
that's
are
not the case
changing.
anymore,
Times are
right.
changing. So they took that presumption out, that against 50-50. Now there's sort of no presumption. It's just open. And so, both parents are entitled to a lot of time with the children. Sometimes what time sharing schedule develops is just a matter of people's schedules. People
Right, their work
different
schedules.
their work schedules. Some people travel. So it's really, the legislature has made it very open so that they really want people to try to work this stuff out and mediate and attempt to resolve the time sharing schedule themselves, because every family is different and what's going
Right.
to fit for every family, and depending on things like the age of the children and work schedules and all that kind of stuff. It can differ quite a bit. So
Right. So tell everybody, what's the process of filing for a divorce in Florida?
The process is generally when one party or the other, it doesn't usually matter who, wants to initiate the process, they would file a petition for dissolution of marriage. And the other party, the responding party, gets served, usually by process server, person that comes to your door in plain clothes and serves you a packet of papers that initiates the case. It's a lawsuit, and you actually get served with the standard summons form. It says this is a lawsuit being filed against you. The respondent has 20 days to respond. Usually they'll file an answer. And in a divorce case, you'll typically see parties filing a counter petition, so that there's a petitioner and there's a counter petitioner. Both parties are asking for relief.
Are they surprised to be getting these?
Depends on, I have a lot of people most people I think will forewarn the other person. And I always tell people, yeah, absolutely, try to soften the blow. Tell them, listen, this is happening, or we've known this is going to happen for a while, and try to talk about it first and say, you're going to get some papers. It just
Right.
means
If somebody's not coming home at night, obviously.
right. And it
They're gonna
depends,
file for
it
divorce.
depends on the case, but a lot of times I'll tell people, you can even tell your partner, it doesn't mean I necessarily want to have World War III with you or a big battle. It just means we need to get this started. And yes, I've hired an attorney. I want to make sure this is done the right way and get legal advice.
Right,
and
but
so
when you serve the papers, it really,
it can still
harsh,
be traumatic,
yeah.
because you do see, like I said, you see the summons, and the summons says a lawsuit is being filed against you. And usually the petition, even what we call a vanilla petition, which is just a very general, plain statement of what the issues are. You allege, if there are children, that there are children, and we need to provide, figure out a time sharing schedule and provide support for the children. But if someone's asking for alimony or asking for the other party to pay their attorney's fees, those requests are going to be in there. And sometimes people are shocked to see that, or if you see the word, especially when you see the word alimony, and then when you put the word permanent in front of it, that's always kind of, it's like, whoa. So it can be scary. And, but I advise, people who are going to serve their spouse, try to soften the blow. Why not? And at least warn them that it's coming, and let
that's
them
if they
know.
have a good relationship. There are a lot of people that get divorced.
You hope. I see that more and more, though. I see people who are more inclined to mediate and resolve their issues, even if the marriage, was horrible and they can't stand each other. And when they have children together,
Right,
too.
that would be ideal, but typically a lot of times it's not the case.
It's true. It's true. Yeah.
Do you offer mediation service?
Yes, I happen to be a mediator. So I mediate cases sort of with a separate hat on. With my mediator hat on, I would say I can't give legal advice. But yes, I will I'll mediate cases for parties. Typically, I prefer that the parties coming in for mediation have counsel, that they each are represented by counsel. And the reason for that is that as a mediator, you're a neutral person. You mediator with their mediator hat on. Even though I'm a lawyer, I can't give legal advice. So, I'm there
That
to
must
try
be
to.
tough.
It is tough.
Like-
As a lawyer, it's really hard for me to just to separate that. But because I know what I think, and I'm but it's as a mediator, yeah, you're a neutral, and you're there to facilitate settlement, try to help the parties, reach a meeting of the minds.
That's it about settlement only. It's not about trying to get back together
No, correct.
No, she's not a
Yeah,
therapist.
yeah, that's a good question. Some people actually come to mediation in the middle of a case, and sometimes you'll realize, wait a minute, is the marriage really broken? Is it really irretrievably broken, or is there a chance? And somebody might say, I've had mediations before where I've seen people show up to mediation and say, hey, listen, we went to breakfast this morning and we're not sure this marriage is quite over, and can we have some time to talk? And the mediation will completely not go forward, and
But that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing. Absolutely. Sure.
We got an
I've seen
email.
people get back together in the middle of a divorce and never come back to reinitiate it. So
Yeah,
Maybe
every time
reality sets
you
in.
never
yes.
know. You never know.
every time Renee makes me sleep in the car at night, we make up the next morning.
Yeah.
We had an email. This is nothing I would send to you, but we had an email, and it said, "Love the show. How about grandparents' rights?" That's all it said.
Okay.
How about grandparents' rights?
Okay.
They really don't have any, do they?
Not in Florida. Not in Florida. And I
In
say
other
not in
states
Florida.
they do?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure at this point in time. Possibly. But in Florida, I know, no, we don't. Yeah. So, and I've had this issue come up before where parties to a divorce are saying, well, when are my parents or her parents or his parents going to see the children spend time? The grandparents are going to spend time with the children when the children have time with the respective parents.
Exactly.
Yeah. So there are no legal rights or claims that they can file in the state
judge
of
would
Florida to
never
gain their
rule
own
on
rights. Correct.
Gosh.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, it's in extreme cases or rare cases, you have situations where it's actually not in. It's not in technically in family court. It's outside. There's another court called what we call dependency court, and sometimes grandparents will file for rights as a custodian when you have a parent who is like incapacitated or very sick.
Right,
or,
but that's a whole different ballgame.
Correct.
That's just
or
not
their
the
rights.
typical family.
Correct. That's correct. It's a whole different ballgame. So.
The last show we did, Renee and I were talking, and we're like big fans of yours
Oh,
now.
thank
I mean,
you.
it's like if I ever needed, don't look at me like that. If I ever needed,
As
First, you
am
have to be-
I of
first
yours.
of all, you have to be married to
Okay.
have a divorce.
So
Okay?
we would want to hire someone. Like, I mean, you're just
Thank you.
the way
Yes.
your
What
passion
counties
is.
do you practice in?
That's what I was going to ask.
Palm Beach County mostly, Broward County. I have cases. I have a case right now in Brevard County. I had a trial last year in Sarasota. I'm not even sure what county that is actually. St. Lucie County, but generally Palm Beach County and Broward County.
Okay. But if we have so many people in Broward County who listen
Mm-hmm.
to the show and Martin County who
yeah,
listen
so
to
she
the show,
covers all those counties, which
Okay.
is perfect.
All the way
this
to
would be
Martin, okay.
worth, listen, there's nothing good about divorce, but you want to make sure you have someone
Listen,
representing
you definitely, and I'm speaking from experience, you want to make sure that you go to somebody that only handles family law, like Tina, because I had, and I think I mentioned to you,
Yeah.
the worst attorney. I got
Yeah.
basically nothing. So let me just ask you something. How do they calculate child support? Because that's one question everybody asks me.
It's in Florida, it's a formula. I mean, I think in most states it's a formula. If not all states, it's a formula. But in Florida, what we do is there's a formula that takes into consideration both parties' incomes. So they're both
They
parties'
add them
incomes
together.
They add them together, and then based on that number, and it's a net number, your net income, so not gross. So after taxes, your net incomes, and then they add that together, and based on that net combined income of the parties and how many children you have, there's a chart. And there's a chart in the statute. It's Florida Statute 61.30, and so you can go in there and say, based on if your net combined income together between the two of you is a certain number, and you look over in the chart 1, 2, 3 children, that's the number that the legislature has figured out it costs for the two of you to raise this many children, and then that number is divided proportionately between the two parents, based on proportion of income. So if one person's earning 30% of the income, the other is 70% of the income. The person usually, and then the other thing is this: most of the time, the number of overnights that the parties each have also deviates that number.
That factors in?
Yeah. It didn't used to be as common, but they changed the statute a few years back so that most parties in most situations will have some deviation for the number of overnights that they each have. So that plays in as well. And then, of course, you add things like who's paying the children's health insurance premium? Is there any cost of aftercare, childcare? That goes into the equation. And then there are all kinds of credits and offsets, but it's all accounted for in the formula for those things. And so
So what happens if, say, the husband owns his own business and he's not reporting all his income. So what do you do in that case? Because that happens a lot.
It does happen a lot. Well, and when you say reporting, that could mean because here's the thing: a
He's
business
not telling you,
owner,
he's not being honest and
Right.
upfront as far as what his earnings are.
person who's not being honest, you probably have a case where your attorney would want to hire a forensic accountant to get to the bottom of that, because you need somebody who can really go in as an expert, a financial expert,
Isn't
and
that a
do.
huge expense, though?
It's expensive, yeah.
Yes.
It can get expensive, but can be very worth it if you have someone who's saying, "Oh, I have my own business and I only make a few dollars, or I have a loss at the end of every year." And it's like, well, yeah, those are your business numbers, and that may be all fine, but
And
what
they're
do you
living
really?
lavishly.
They're living lavishly. They're
Yes.
paying everything through their business, or they have cash or things
That's
like
what I'm
that. So you can
saying,
get to
yes.
the bottom of a lot of that and really figure out what the actual numbers are if you have a forensic expert. And maybe in a lot of cases it's really worth it, because you find a lot more, and and that also goes into not only child support but also alimony.
Right.
We got to go to break. And
We
when
do
we come
already?
back,
What?
I want to talk to you about Florida's a no-fault state.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't know what that means. A lot of people say, hey, it's not my fault. Anyway, we'll be right back.
Lewert Law Offices is proud to be the family law expert on the Ask the Expert show. Attorney Tina Lewert is a board-certified specialist in marital and family law. Attorney Lewert is committed to obtaining the best resolution for your divorce or other family law case by consistently providing skilled representation, expert legal advice, and personal attention. Attorney Lewert has developed an excellent reputation for providing effective divorce and family law representation in Boca Raton and the surrounding communities. Lewert Law Offices offers legal advice and representation in a wide range of family law matters, including divorce, child custody, time sharing and visitation, child support, alimony, complex asset distribution, post-judgment modifications, and paternity actions. For expert representation in all aspects of divorce and family law, contact Attorney Tina Lewert today at 561-544-6861 or visit www.lewertlaw.com.
And we're back. We're here with attorney Tina Lewert. And, I was joking with her before about no fault. This is a no fault state. Everybody's says, oh, not my fault. But what does it really
It's
mean?
never anyone's fault.
Yes.
What it means to be a no-fault state is that you don't need to prove grounds in Florida to get a divorce. So, for example, and I think we talked about this another time. I don't know if there are any states left even doing this. Very few, if any.
New York.
Where is it still New York? Yeah, where you used to have to prove adultery or
Yes.
abuse or different things like that to even be able to get a divorce. In Florida, all you need to do is in the petition that you file, you say the marriage is irretrievably broken. And what that means is that the marriage is over and there's nothing the court can do to put the marriage back together. And I always tell my client, no one's ever going to ask you, well, why, or what happened, or whose fault was it, or who wanted to work it out and who didn't, or who wanted to file and who didn't, or who went to counseling and who did, all that kind of stuff. No one's really ever going to ask you, even though those things come up in the discussions, but the court's never going to want to know.
That doesn't affect the outcome.
Correct.
I guarantee you, I'm sure this is a man thing. Tell people why they shouldn't try to represent themselves.
Why is it a man thing?
I don't know. I can see a man go, I can do this
No,
myself.
because a lot of people
Yeah.
saying, well, I don't need to spend the money. We
Right,
can work this out.
right.
But that's not the case, because once you start getting involved with all the paperwork and everything else,
Yeah. Well,
You get in
a
trouble.
few reasons. I see this come up because I'll see people that do try to handle it themselves or that do finalize their divorces on their own without counsel. And I see various things. I see people, firstly, having problems sort of navigating their way through the court system, getting hearings set. How do I set a mediation? How do I set a final hearing? What happens if we don't agree at mediation? What happens next? How do I get a trial date? What kind of discovery? How do I get documents from the other person? People don't know those things. And then in addition to that, I've had cases where people come back after the divorce is over and they say, we didn't have attorneys. Can you help? We're having this issue or that issue or something that came up that just completely wasn't whether it's a parenting issue something that they just didn't think of, and it's not in their agreement, and there's nothing to guide them in how to resolve it or how it can be resolved. And so they're going, and I'll look at an agreement and I'll say, oh no, they did like this fill in the blank thing, and
So
it's
what
a
can you
mess.
do? But what can you do at that point?
Sometimes there's only so much you can do. Sometimes you're very limited or restricted in what you can do, because it's done, and the court order is the court order. If there's something left out, you can ask for a modification. You can ask for a clarification. I mean, you can't ask for a modification just because something's left out. If something has changed, you can ask for a modification,
Like finances,
and then hope to try to resolve some of the unresolved issues or things that hope to clean up maybe your marital settlement agreement, so that you can alleviate some of the uncertainty or some of the things that weren't provided for in there. But I see people a lot of times where it's just there are so many things that a lawyer will think of in protecting their client, and the whole point, a lot of lawyers, when they draft contracts, and your marital settlement agreement is a contract, a lawyer's job is to look out for things that might happen in the future, might come up in the future, and try to address those issues before they happen. And so, the average person, even very intelligent professional, you're not thinking like that, and you're not thinking that way. So I see a lot of people that come back and end up having to spend more money.
Pay me now, or you can pay me
to
later.
hire lawyers than they, and it just becomes a mess where they could have
They could have just
alleviated
had
all those
taken
issues
care
that they just,
So you're
wrote
talking
up
about
in the first place.
modifications. Okay, so let's talk about modifications of child support. So
Okay.
obviously, you go in to modify child support if you're making less. But what happens if the ex-husband starts making more? Does that mean that you're entitled to more once he starts earning more money after the fact?
Possibly for child support, yeah. And the general burden, the legal burden for a modification is that a substantial change in circumstances has occurred. So a change in circumstances could be, one person, somebody's making less or somebody's making more. With child support, when someone starts making more, the child support is the children's right, to that money. So absolutely, if someone's making more, and that would make a substantial difference in the ultimate calculation, the numbers that are arrived at in the child support equation, then that could be grounds for modifying child support.
Hey, we need to give Tina's phone number.
Yes, absolutely.
Somebody would like to call and make an appointment with
and
her.
you should.
Sure, it's 561-544-6861, and the office is in Boca Raton, just east of the mall off
Easy
of
to
Blades Road.
find.
Yeah.
And give everybody your website as well.
Sure, it's www.lewertlaw.com, spelled LEWERTLAW.com.
Perfect. So can one lawyer represent both parties?
No, and it's so strange. I've actually seen. You wouldn't believe some of the things I've seen. I've seen
seen
lawyers
all,
that
yes.
I've seen lawyers that don't know that, or that
You're kidding
yeah,
me.
it's
That's scary.
It is scary. But even when you settle your case, or when you have a very amicable divorce, people that come in and say, we've talked about everything, we agree on everything, we just need it drafted, we need the settlement agreement drafted, we need, we don't really need lawyers. The reality is, as parties to a contract, this marital settlement agreement, you're still potentially, you have adverse interests. So a lawyer cannot represent both parties, even when they agree. So usually, if I have a situation like that where people are saying, oh, we agree on everything, we're good, I'll say, well, have a lawyer, whether it's me or the other, draft it for one of you on one of your behalves, and then the other person can take the draft and get a consultation with their own lawyer. It does cut down on costs like that. But people think that they agree and one person can just draft it up and represent both of them. Or some people think that if one lawyer is drafting it, that person is their lawyer. And no, it's,
Right, they're
the
looking
person
to save money, which could hurt them in the long run.
Correct.
I feel I've met so many women in my life that said, boy, did I handle my divorce wrong.
I'm raising my hand.
Well, with the money, I was a nice guy. a nice woman.
Yeah.
And I just let my ex off so easy.
Yeah.
And I feel so sorry for him. So.
Well, that's why I was asking about the modification, because people do have that tendency of, if they want the divorce, they feel guilty and don't want to take too much. But the bottom line is that the children end up suffering as far as that's concerned.
Yeah,
you know,
sometimes.
monetarily.
And even if you're going to come back for a modification, you're sometimes limited in being able to come back for a modification. If you like, for example, you can't modify your property distribution. So whatever assets and debts you divide, you can't
Right, that's
modify that. You can
finalized.
modify child support. You can modify alimony, depending on certain things. And even there, certain things will trigger a modification and certain things won't. So
Tina, I had a friend that
yeah.
declined child support whatsoever.
Really?
She said she was fine by herself. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
So if you decline child support initially, can you go back in and ask for it after the fact?
Years ago, I used to see people doing that or trying to do that, and these days, normally I see judges reading agreements, and they won't allow that. I mean, and technically they're not supposed to allow a person to waive child support because, like I said, child support is the interest is the child's interest,
Right, exactly.
And so a parent or a party can't waive the interest for the child, waive the interest for the child. So a court is really supposed to, if a judge was to look at a marital settlement agreement and see a waiver of child support, they're supposed to say, no, you guys go back and you calculate child support. Well, that's the thing. Some judges will carefully read the agreement, and some judges, they won't. I mean, these judges have 2,000 cases in their division each,
Right.
and they can't possibly look at everything. So sometimes it gets through and it gets passed, but
that's crazy. Why wouldn't you take
yeah.
the child support?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't he have to share in the responsibilities? Well, vice versa, or she?
Well, that's the idea, is that both parents are financially responsible for the support of the
Exactly.
children, that they both share that expense.
I think that this is amazing how fast these shows go by.
It is.
But how I'd like you to end the show is there's people out there listening who have friends that are having marital problems. There's
Everyone knows somebody that's
Family.
either going through a divorce
if they're not
or
themselves.
has been, right.
Why should they choose your law firm?
Well,
And be humble, please.
I know. Well, I am, and that's why that's why I have a hard time answering this question. But one of my qualifications, I guess you could say, is I'm board certified in marital and family law, which means that the Florida Bar has designated me as an expert in the field of marital and family law. There are very few. A lot of people don't know, what that board certification. People say, "Oh, what is that?" Some people I've talked to people that think that just means, "Oh, you passed the bar," but it's actually it's a lot. Yeah, it's kind of a big deal.
Yes.
So there's my humility, but the Florida Bar designates. You've got to go through testing. You've got to go through a rigorous process of having a certain amount of trial experience, a certain number of trials, complex divorce cases, and you have to have a certain percentage of your practice that constitutes your area that you're specializing in. There are only, I believe it's like 281 people in Florida who are experts in family law. Out of 100,000 lawyers.
So she truly is the expert.
Oh, we already knew that.
Yes.
Give everybody your phone number again. It's on the screen, but for those who aren't watching.
It's 561-544-6861.
Law firm is Tina L. Lewert, Esquire, and she's in Boca. But listen, if you're in Hollywood or Fort Lauderdale, it is worth it, trust me, to give her a call. We love having you on our show.
Thank you. I love being here.
And we have another show coming up right after this. We have
Bilu and Bilu.
That's pretty cool how we did that together.
Yes.
Which one do you like the best? Anyway, we're going to go to break. When we come back, we have Gil Bilu on our foreclosure defense. We'll be right back.
Lewert Law Offices is proud to be the family law expert on the Ask the Expert show. Attorney Tina Lewert is a board-certified specialist in marriage.